everyone, this is Callimara here, and no, it's not calamari. So, here's the sitch. I've been going through an emotional crisis lately, and one of my favorite coping mechanisms is escapism. Say what you will about self-inserts being cringe, I don't care. I am free, and I am cringe, and you should be too. You know that feeling when you've been stressed for so long and so much that you don't even remember what being not stressed feels like, and stress just becomes your new normal? Yeah, I just need a bit of a dopamine hit right now. So I will be inserting myself into the worlds and art styles of my favorite shows, movies, books, and video games. All of my comfort media. So I can attempt to comfort myself from the harshness of reality while teaching you guys how to imitate the art style so that your OCs and self-inserts can fit seamlessly into the world. As well as talking a little bit about said media if you don't know about it, because some of them are not as mainstream as they deserve to be, and some of it maybe don't get as much criticism as they should. And yes, I know my friend Jess did something similar not too long ago, and what can I say, great minds think alike, and to be fair to myself, I've been sitting on this video since November of 2025 and are just now getting around to it. And to keep things fresh and fun, we are plugging my very long list of media I enjoy into a wheel and spinning it. If you guys enjoy this video and want to see me go through this entire list, like if maybe you see a show, game, book, or movie on this list that you like and want to learn how to draw like, then be sure to drop a comment or two and hype this video so I know you want more videos like this. So let's get started. Based on the almighty wheel, the 4 media I will be isekaiing myself into is Steven Universe, My Little Witch Academia, Bee and Puppycat, and Professor Layton. A good mix of distinct art styles for sure. Now, if you guys want to do something similar, please tag me and let me see what you make either on Instagram, Twitter, or Tumblr. I want to see your OCs. Also, as a YouTuber, you'd think I'd have a good array of merch for people interested in supporting me to peruse, but I don't. So I think this is also a good opportunity for me to make some by turning the art I make in this video into pins and stickers so you can get it if it happens to be a reference to a show or game you like, so then you get the best of both worlds. And hey, if you want to do it yourself for your OCs, I'll show you how, because this video is sponsored by Printful. Printful is a print-on-demand company that does all their printing in-house and has worked with brands like Coca-Cola, Spotify, MTV, and CBS, so they'll definitely have the experience to get your merch creation needs taken care of. What is print-on-demand, you ask? Well, it's exactly how it sounds. You print the products as soon as you get an order, so you don't need to worry about storage or delivery. Or in this case, if you just want to DIY merch of your own OCs and ships, because you absolutely can just buy the products for yourself. I'm choosing to do this with Printful because I've been using it to sell my own art prints, and so far everyone who has received their orders has been very pleased, so I know their quality is up to par. And right now, Printful has just released their all-over cotton printing style, a game changer in the print-on-demand industry. These all-over cotton printers cost around $500,000, and with Printful, merchants have unlimited access to utilize them to fulfill their merchandise. It also helps a lot for someone outside of the US who is looking to sell to their US audience because of the tariffs or the current geopolitical state of international trade, because Printful's production and warehouses are all based in the US. So let's get started. Starting with Steven Universe, because this show kind of dominated my life when I was a teenager. Need I remind you, I was homeschooled and had no IRL friends. And I'm pretty much digging up an old OC I had already made that you might have already seen in my sketchbook tour if you are one of my Sea Bunnies on Patreon. Now, despite already having a Steven Universe OC and having quite an extensive knowledge of the show and lore, I was never really part of the SU fandom because it was a bit much even for me, and I kind of have a love-hate relationship with the show overall. On one hand, the character designs are extremely hit or miss and wildly inconsistent depending on which artist worked on the storyboards, because apparently the offshore animation team worked purely off of storyboards. It also suffered from an extreme lack of direction in the later seasons, with episodes that focused entirely too much on side characters that weren't relevant to the plot nor contributed anything to the story, leading to them cramming every major plot beat into the finale because they used up all their episode allowance on unnecessary filler. I'll be honest, I barely remember anything about the finale aside from the fusion cameos as they were falling, finally seeing Obsidian, finally seeing White Diamond, and that one segment that James Baxter animated. And that's about it. The only things I always enjoyed without fail are all the stunning backgrounds and background scores by Ivy and Surashu. So, my OC or gemstona is Moonstone. I chose Moonstone because it's one of the 3 birthstones of the month of June, which is my birth month, because the 2 other June birthstones have already been featured on the show. Which ones, you ask? Well, Pearl and Alexandrite, of course. And yes, in case you were wondering, Pearl has always been my favorite crystal gem as well. But after watching the finale and learning that fusions don't really look the way their namesake gems should, I'm pretty curious to see what a real Alexandrite would look like too, as opposed to an Alexandrite that is a fusion of a pearl, an amethyst, and a garnet, with garnet herself being a fusion of a sapphire and a ruby. I highly doubt they'd be a similar size because that would probably make them seem more equal to the diamonds, which would likely be considered gem heresy. But let's talk about Moonstone, shall we? Now, moonstones are often called the stone of new beginnings, which encompasses inner growth and strength, but also deeply associated with intuition, emotional balance, calming, nurturing, and divine feminine energy. Appearance-wise, they are transparent to translucent, often with a milky, opalescent, or clear quality, and a signature blue shimmer called adulorescence, which is a soft, floating, billowy light that shimmers across its surface like moonlight, hence the name. And because of that namesake, I imagine she would have gravity manipulation abilities, allowing her to make herself or others float by decreasing gravity or increasing gravity to bring others to their knees or make herself immovable. Or both simultaneously if the situation calls for it, but she would not have a gem weapon. So based on that alone, I initially considered her belonging to Blue Diamond's court, with the stone's heavy association with emotions and intuition. But you'll see later that I'm gonna change my mind about that. For now, let's talk about how you can replicate Steven Universe's art style to make it look like your character could fit right into the show. So, something I notice a lot with more modern Western animation is that while they tend to borrow heavy influences from Japanese anime and manga, they still tend to stick to more Western realism proportions. Where Japanese manga tend to squish the facial features down to the middle and lower third of the face and create a larger forehead, Western animations like Steven Universe tend to leave very little blank space at all. The facial features often take up the entire head, and eye shape is few and far between unless you are high enough on the gem hierarchy. Otherwise, you get circles and you will like it. Limbs will often be overly simplified to the extent that large joints will be omitted. Modern 2D Western animation for some reason is very averse to knees and elbows. Maybe it's because they use puppet animation, but I don't think Steven Universe does that. And so I don't get it. Instead, it just creates these little pinches that have always rubbed me the wrong way. In any case, any sort of musculature is ignored for either tube limbs or noodle limbs, and for Moonstone, we are doing noodles. I'm mostly referencing the more ethereal and delicate-looking gems like lapis lazuli, sapphire, and blue pearl because moonstones are quite delicate gems with a hardness of only 6 to 6.5 on the Mohs scale, making it prone to cracking if not handled properly. And because this is art for an animation, it's very important that you have flat, boring lines. So I suggest either turning pen pressure off or using a line tool. Gem placement also matters a lot and can say a lot about your characters. Gems with head placements tend to be more intellectual, whereas gems with chest placements are more emotional, to name a few examples. I want Moonstone to be more of an intellectual gal, which is relevant to her lore that I will explain later, so her gem is placed on her forehead. For her outfit, I am drawing heavy inspiration from one of the traditional clothing of my country called kabaya. Now, every province kind of has its own style of kabaya, and for this one, I am doing a combination of Javanese and Balinese kabaya. Balinese women's traditional clothes use this pattern of batik on their skirts, which form diamond motifs, and considering most homeworld gems have some sort of diamond motif in their clothing, I thought this would be the perfect inclusion. Also because I think it looks super regal and befitting of a gem of high status. It also matches the outfit my Sona currently wears while still seeming a bit more extravagant and out there. So, let's talk about her lore. As I've mentioned before, I imagine Moonstone to be a homeworld gem who is something similar to Sapphire in terms of social status. Being the stone of new beginnings, she would be involved in gem manufacturing and the strategic aspects of gem colony expansion, like deciding which planet to colonize, how many kindergartens they can build, where, and what supporting structures they need. Then afterwards, they'd be responsible for overseeing the preparation and implantation of gems in their host planet, as well as doing checkups for the new gems that have successfully emerged. Kind of like an obstetrician, midwife, and a primary care physician, all in one. Now, as for the court she belongs to, I've decided she probably belonged to Pink Diamond's court. After all, Earth was Pink's colony, and so our moonstone is therefore Peach Moonstone. A peach moonstone typically exhibits a soft, warm orange to pink hue and, of course, that signature adulorescence. Known for its gentle, feminine energy, it is often associated with emotional healing, boosting intuition, and stimulating creativity, particularly when linked to the heart and sacral chakras, which I think still suits me, even though I'm not quite sure what that means. That is, until the rebellion happened. Now, imagine the Alpha Kindergarten was her station. She oversaw the creation of most of the amethysts, including our crystal gem amethyst. Things were going well until the rebel rose quartz and her pearl struck. Being the gems responsible for running kindergartens, moonstones were probably the primary target of the rebellion. Production was halted, and Moonstone saw many of her peers be poofed or outright shattered in battle, but she successfully returned to Homeworld. However, the trauma of the massacre and the abandonment of her magnum opus on Earth continued to haunt her, and so she was taken in by White Diamond, who took control of her the same way she had taken control of Pink Pearl. Eventually, she was freed from that control, of course, and yet she never quite got her colors back. Nevertheless, she still continues to serve White Diamond, perhaps working as a healer to repair gem malfunctions or cracks, but still holding a quiet resentment towards her former Diamond. I'll be honest, I actually really struggled a lot with the facial proportions because, as I've said, Western animations like Steven Universe tend to leave very little blank space at all, and I'm very used to squishing the facial features into the lower parts of the face. And on top of that, Steven Universe is very minimal with eye details, and unless you're a diamond, you get no eyelashes or definition at all. And I'm so used to doing that because to me personally, the eyes are always the main focal point of my drawings. So that was really making the design look off to me if it were supposed to replicate the art style. In the end, I ended up redoing the entire face, and I think I managed to get it right this time. So let's make this design Calliverse canon with a sticker! And this is how you do it. So with Printful, you just go to your dashboard after making an account, and here I get a bunch of stuff already recommended to me, but for your first time, you should go to product catalog, type in the product you want, and here I'm just gonna click sticker and some pins. So for the stickers, I usually go for the Kiss Cut sticker just because they're pretty cheap and I want this to be affordable to my fans. And I'm just gonna go with the 3x3 size here because I don't need to have all that be so big. And I'm gonna upload my design, and once it's uploaded, you can just click apply and it immediately imports the drawing, and you can crop it however you want. And for this one, I'm gonna focus on the more dynamic back facing pose because I just think it's a lot more interesting for a sticker. Just gonna resize that so that it fills up the space a lot better. And this is looking a bit lonely, and obviously I'm not gonna sell something so boring, so I'm gonna add a few embellishments like a logo and just some background stuff that you can find in the clip art section. And once you're happy with what you have, you can click publish and it'll take you to the mockups, where you can choose the mockup that fits your product the most. And once you're happy with that, you can go to the product details and just put in what you want to call your merch, as well as the description and the tags that are relevant to it. And then you just hit publish and it'll generate your merch for you and immediately link it to whatever storefront you're selling. And for me, I'm selling to Etsy. For the pins, Printful has already saved my previous design, so all I have to do is just click the pin template and it immediately imports my design onto that, which is super helpful. And the pins are actually a set of 5, so I'm just going through each pin design, and this means I get to use the other pose as well, which I really appreciate that it didn't go to waste. And it's just a lot of fun to play with the clip art and stock media that is available for you to use on Printful to just help give your merch a bit more oomph and to save time as well, so you're not manually drawing every element by yourself, because I am personally very busy. So as much as I wish I could be doing all of this by hand, custom made, these templates really help a lot, especially if you are also just looking to make these for yourself and not necessarily to sell them. It just saves a lot of time and is super helpful and pretty intuitive, I would say, in terms of the interface. And here's how they look. I'm super pleased with them. They look super cute and aesthetic, and I definitely want to grab these for myself. Okay, on to the next show. Bee and Puppycat. So in case you didn't know, Bee and Puppycat is an animated web series created by Natasha Allegri, who, in case you didn't know, worked as a character designer for Adventure Time. In fact, she was the person who came up with Fiona and Cake and was responsible for illustrating a lot of the Adventure Time comics before going on to create her own show. Bee and Puppycat was first released as a pilot on YouTube in 2013 before expanding into a full series through a successful Kickstarter campaign. And let me tell you, I'm pretty sure like a quarter of those views were from Kid Callie alone. I was obsessed with that pilot and was chomping at the bit to finally watch the show in full. It finally launched on YouTube through Cartoon Hangover from 2014 to 2016, and you can still watch the full 10-episode run today. It was later revised as Bee and Puppycat, Lazy in Space, but premiered on Netflix on September 6, 2022 as just Bee and Puppycat, making the full story more accessible to a wider audience. It's gone through a few art style changes and story changes from pilot to Cartoon Hangover to Netflix, and as the visuals kept improving and became even more incredible to look at, the writing just kept getting worse. This is my personal hot take rewatching Bee and Puppycat on Netflix, but the writing and humor is genuinely so ass it makes it hard to watch. The characters used to feel really realistic and down to earth, but now they all feel like aliens. Even the humans. Everyone just feels so emotionally dead. They're always underreacting to extreme things happening around them, even characters that are supposed to be regular Earth civilians, or they make strange comments that I guess are supposed to be funny, but just don't land the way they probably expected. They changed Bee so much as a character from the pilot, and if I'm being honest, I actually preferred the way she was before than the version we have now. I wish that Bee was the version we got to see on a Netflix series. Spoiler alert, in case you haven't watched Bee and Puppycat yet, even though it's been out for 4 years now, but Bee is a robot. And the fact that she is a robot defeats the purpose of the entire premise of the show. See, what Bee and Puppycat was originally pitched as back then is what Fiona and Cake the series is now. It's about a young adult who is living on her own for perhaps the first time and is struggling to get her life together and hold down a job so she can feed herself and pay her rent. But one day, a strangely intelligent, magical animal falls into her arms from a mysterious portal that takes her on wild adventures across the multiverse for temp work, and now, that's how she's getting by. Can you guess which show I'm talking about? It's a more mundane, relatable twist to the magical girl genre that I'm sure a lot of young adults also relate to. Instead of saving the world, you just want to be paid enough to buy your next meal and keep a roof over your head. I feel that. But none of that actually matters if Bee is a robot that doesn't actually need food or shelter to survive, does she? Which begs the question of, why does she need a job in the first place? And to me at least, I think it ruins the entire premise of the show. And the fact that Bee knows she's a robot and was raised among the more fantastical elements of the show also takes away the charm of Bee experiencing those fantastical things in the first place, because she's already used to them. So she doesn't react to them in any meaningful way. So the whole show just feels like a beautiful, pointless mess that I can't even play in the background because the jokes and voice acting direction are so bad it makes me want to watch something else. And you can't even argue that it's a localization issue because the entire show is written and voiced in English originally. So maybe it would help if I turned on the Japanese dub so I can't understand what they're saying at all. Now, I'm not gonna go too far with my gripes over this series. Maybe that could be a topic for another video. All in all, it's still a beautiful show that I love with my whole heart, and it's a world I wish I could immerse myself in. So let's move on to how you can do that too. Bee and Puppycat's style to me is something very much akin to chibi. The characters are all very soft and super rounded. The character designs tend to avoid sharp points and are well built rather than slender. And here I'm pretty much referencing all of the female characters that appear in the show because there aren't that many to begin with. But I was mostly enamored by Cardamom's mom, and that's the kind of feel I'm trying to go for in this design. The show's style actually reminds me a lot of Steven Universe actually. It's all very dreamy and cute, and I think those are the vibes you gotta keep in mind for this particular show. Actually, doing designs for Steven Universe and Bee and Puppycat consecutively was honestly an exercise in really boring line art. You guys know that I prefer to do thick dynamic lines with manual brush strokes, but shows like SU and BP lean the exact opposite in that their lines are extremely flat and thin. I did not have fun with it at all. I basically just used the line tool for consistent line weight, and it was so boring to me. Maybe people enjoy drawing line art like this, but for me personally, it feels really impersonal and detached. I didn't really change much for my Sona in terms of design, mostly because I think her outfit already fits in perfectly with the world and aesthetic. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Though I did do something a little different with her bangs because I just love Cardamom's little hair swirl so much. Lore-wise, I think she definitely would have come from space like Puppycat and his crew, but not necessarily from the same ship, which, spoiler alert, is what makes up the entire town in the show. I think she's probably some sort of visitor sent by a higher authority, like a space council or something, to keep track of the ship that went down on Earth and became Ship Isle. possibly to monitor the humans or the bizarre plants that pop up naturally around town. I keep thinking she'd be some sort of Doctor Who character who is immortal and travels around the universe and jumps into multiple different timelines and realities as an observer, which is pretty much the thesis of this entire video. And hey, that way she still gets to be called Doctor. And I like to think that she does run a cozy little health clinic and is known as a primary care physician in Ship Isle, but with a little something more to her, which seems to be the ongoing theme in being Puppycat. But here is how she looks. I'm actually super pleased with how this turned out. It suits my style and preferences so well, even though drawing it felt like pulling teeth. And I think I did a pretty good job replicating the style. I think we can mark this off with another Calliverse Canon sticker. But let me know what you think. Next up, we have one of my most beloved game series that just doesn't get talked about enough, Professor Layton. So the Professor Layton games are a series of mystery, investigation, puzzle adventure games originally released on the Nintendo DS back in 2007. The games center around Professor Herschel Layton, who is an archaeologist with a love and skill for solving puzzles, and his young apprentice Luke. Because of his intelligence and skill for puzzles, the police will often come to Professor Layton when they have a particularly puzzling case they can't solve on their own, such as the premise of most of the games in the series. Since then, they've released a total of 10 games, including a crossover with another beloved DS game of mine, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. Yep, Professor Layton and Phoenix Wright are canonically in the same universe and colleagues, and the game itself is very good, and I highly recommend it if you enjoy either game or mystery/investigation games in general. My first Professor Layton game was actually also the first game in the series, Professor Layton and the Curious Village. It has a lot of fun and creative puzzles that can get pretty challenging, but always make you feel really clever for figuring it out. And it has a super cool twist ending that left an impression on me and I still think about even today. But more than that, I also just really love the art style of the game. All the characters always look super unique, and the character designers never hold back when it comes to making every single character stand out. And that is actually very important because the story of these games are heavily character-driven in the same way every whodunit story is. Have a cast of colorful characters to act as potential suspects and eliminate them one by one based on the evidence you have. But the thing I love most about the art direction is how everything looks like it came out of the pages of a storybook. It just has such a whimsical, hand-drawn feel to it that I adore. A common thread among the character design, however, is that as Professor Layton is a Japanese production, the characters tend to follow more classical manga sensibilities. I'm talking Astro Boy and Crayon Shin-chan. Thus, the style is very much top-heavy with larger heads and very thin, short, and gangly limbs. Kind of like chibi. The eyes also tend to take up most of the face and sit lower than Western cartoons would have them. But overall, the style is very distinct, cute, and simple. It's really fun and easy to do, and I think simple is probably the main aspect of this art style. Now, technically speaking, the Professor Layton art style also calls for thin, consistent lines, especially for the animated segments, but the in-game sprites do have more of a pen-drawn feel to them, at least in the earlier games. So I am taking that as an excuse to go back to my brushes as opposed to the line tool again, but if I'm being honest, I was just bored of the line tool. But because the pen tool tends to carry more personality, shall we say, I had to be mindful of keeping my lines crisp and thin, even though I usually do the opposite. This made me wonder a little bit about why I leaned towards thick lines in the first place, and reflecting back on it now, I realized it was because my hands weren't very steady, and thin hands are very unforgiving. It will show every wobble, every imprecise ending, so I resorted to thicker lines because it hid those things better. Or it might have also been because I had subpar tools starting out, so that probably also contributed to that. But I like to think that I have steadier hands and better equipment now, so I don't really need to lean on thick lines like a crutch anymore. And this was kind of a fun exercise to help me realize that. So for my design, I'm mostly referencing Flora and Lady Dahlia, who are major characters from the first game, as well as Catriel and Mayor Lowenida from one of the more recent games, Catriel and the Millionaire's Conspiracy. Flora and Lady Dahlia give me a good baseline for what female characters typically look like in this style, whereas obviously I referenced Catriel for her hair and Mayor Lowenida because her fashion is close to what I'm going for. As a baseline, I basically drew my Sona as is using the style first to get myself familiar with it. And I was pretty much going to leave it at that, but the demons in me wanted to do a different design that would make her fit into the 20th century London look more, as well as the context of the game. So I decided to create another design that looks more like a work outfit so I can be part of the story in some way. Because Professor Layton games are all about solving mysteries and puzzles, I think I would probably be a forensic doctor that does autopsies and other biomedical studies, maybe acting as a crucial informant for Professor Layton, be it Catriel or her father Herschel. Yes, the Professor Layton has a daughter who takes over his investigation business to help them gain more insight on specific cases. So of course, my character would be wearing a cute little doctor's coat as well as some scholarly ensemble underneath. I was super pleased with how this design turned out actually, because I have been trying so hard to use this color palette as my main one, but I think the brown dominant palette just isn't as interesting for most people. But today, this palette is Caliverse Canon. And last but not least, we have My Little Witch Academia. Now, it has been such a long time since I've finished this series, probably all the way back during COVID era when I was in nursing school, which was 6 years ago! Dude, that's crazy. I still feel like I'm in 2021, but whatever. The point is, I watched this series once back when I still had free time and it really stuck with me. I still remember bits and pieces of the show, but the details of the story at this point are kind of hazy to me. The main gist of it is magic exists, anyone can learn it, and the show is about a girl learning to become a witch by going to a prestigious witch academy despite coming from a non-magical background because she was inspired by this one famous witch called Shiny Chariot. It's pretty much just Harry Potter and My Hero Academia, however you want to look at it. But instead of Hogwarts, the magic school is an all-girls school called Luna Nova, and it's no secret. Everyone knows about it. Anyone can enroll, and if anything, they want you to enroll because magic is kind of a dying art in this show because people are beginning to find casting spells to be outdated when you have technology, which also makes this kind of like Onward. But the main draw of the show for me is the fact that it was made by the legendary animation studio, Studio Trigger, who did Kill la Kill, Promare, and literally Cyberpunk Edge Runners. So the character design and animation is incredibly insane and out of this world. That was what stuck to me the most about LWA as well, even after all these years. And after drawing such soft, reserved designs for Steven Universe and Bee and Puppycat, it feels so good to draw something wild and dynamic again. That's also a main difference I notice among Western animation versus Eastern/Japanese animation specifically. In regards to character design and movement, I find that Western animation is so much more reserved and realistic. They don't tend to be very dynamic and will mostly keep silhouettes interesting just by shape, but not by gesture. They'll have their characters look really interesting, but not really wear anything interesting to complement that silhouette. Meanwhile, Japanese animation tend to exaggerate a lot more, putting intrigue and dynamics ahead of realism. And I personally lean way more towards this than Western animation, I find. I love exaggerating gestures and making characters pop. Drawing like this just feels right to me, whereas I felt like I was really holding back and trying to be more conservative before. But, at the end of the day, it's all about preference and what you value most in your art. I actually find that the Studio Trigger art style reminds me a lot of the more recent Pokemon art style, because in case you didn't know, I also did a little design in that art style a while ago. It really is about pushing that silhouette through clothing and posing, and to me, that's just so much more fun. I think the problem is that the West is always one step behind Eastern fashion, and so a lot of the clothes on these animated characters are oftentimes just very unimpressive compared to shows that come out of South Korea or China. So for my Sona, you might think that I would be drawing myself in the student's attire, which, yeah, chic, iconic. However, in case you somehow forgot, I am old, and I do not feel the need to mingle with children like that. And so if I were to be in MLWA, I would probably be a professor. Fun fact, I was actually a teaching assistant for pharmacology while I was studying my nursing degree, and now I'm in medicine, and pharmacology is still one of my best subjects, and so for that reason, I think I would probably teach a potions class and maybe healing magic too. Now obviously, because I want my Sona to be lore accurate, I looked up some of the main components of the staff uniform and what they mean. It mostly consists of this bell-shaped skirt, though some teachers have different shapes as well, but they're usually older, and they always have this flame motif, which symbolizes the passion for learning and seeking knowledge, as well as a fully pointed hat instead of the floppy ones that the students have. They also have a crescent moon as opposed to the Luna Nova symbol on their hat, and the feathers in their hat also signify their rank in the faculty. One feather means they're just regular professors, regular staff. 2 feathers mean they are a senior staff member or have achieved mastery over their magic, and 3 feathers are reserved for the headmistress. I'm content with only 1 feather in my hat, but I will, of course, be incorporating my signature bow into it as well. Likewise, line-wise, it definitely falls back into the thin, clean lines of every other show and game I've drawn for this video, and you know what? I'm tired of this, Grandpa! I'm tired of these Ozempic lines! Obviously, I didn't go back to the line tool this time. I just want to have fun, and I don't care what everyone else thinks. So I used my pen tool and drew very thin lines instead. As my artist progression has always intended apparently, because now I'm actually able to do them relatively neatly compared to how I was when I was, say, 13. Who would have thought? Design-wise, My Little Witch Academia falls into the same sensibilities as Professor Layton, which isn't surprising considering they're both Japanese studios. You can either get super unique and highly stylized characters, or cute anime girl. Either way, a win is a win, and you can go as crazy as you want with the designs. Honestly, if Professor Layton ever did a crossover with My Little Witch Academia, I think the art styles would blend together far more seamlessly than their Ace Attorney crossover. I honestly had a lot of fun with this design because the outfits are already so well designed. I mostly reference Professor Ursula because we would be around the same age and I didn't want my Sona to look like a child. Unfortunately, I don't think I managed to achieve that because to me at least, I still look more like one of the students than a member of faculty. I don't know what I did wrong. Maybe I had the head and body proportions off. You know what? That was probably it. But also, I can just make the excuse that I age really well and am also really short in real life. And in real life, it's probably because of stunting. But in My Little Witch Academia, let's just say it's because I came up with some miraculous anti-aging beauty potion. That makes it a bit more digestible, doesn't it? As a professor, I think I'd probably seem really intimidating on first impressions because I'm autistic and I don't try to mask very hard. So people just think I'm really cold and harsh, which I definitely can be. But once you find my special interest, I'll basically talk your ear off about it with great enthusiasm. Obviously, I care a lot about my students, but I also have very strict professional boundaries and I won't try to meddle in their business that much if I can help it. Like, if it's outside of school hours and nobody's dying, nobody's missing, nobody's gravely injured, I won't bother you, and I sure hope you won't bother me either. And I think I'd probably criticize Ursula for doing that a lot, because she's definitely way too involved with her students. And here is the final look. I ended up going in with the liquify tool to change the head to body proportion, and I think that helped significantly to make my design look more like an adult. So obviously, she's also canon in the Calliverse. This sticker makes it so. Let me know what you think. Did I capture the art style well enough? But for now, that's all from me. If you made it this far, thanks for hanging out in my channel for a while. I hope your skin didn't get too pruny. Big shout out to my lovely sea bunnies on Patreon. If you want to become a sea bunny and get extra perks like a free commission from me, join my Patreon. If you want to see more from me, then please follow me on all my social media. If you want to submit fan art or chat with me, join my Discord server. And if you want more of my stories, check out my Wild Word series here on YouTube because that will make me really happy. All the links are in my description and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye!